Hi guys, it's Nancy, and we are going to make this cute little card here. Well, this is the card, the stamped piece. You'll just put it on a card base when you're ready. But I digress. My battery is not lasting very long here, so let's move on. So, very simple to do. What we're going to do is we are going to be using only Distress Oxide inks for this. And we are going to start with the background. And you can either use sponges or I have the Distress Ink daubers, Distress Ink tools here with the sponges. I put a little piece of Velcro on the bottom of mine and I store my sponges on there. So here you can see, of course, the one that I grabbed doesn't have it. Just like that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of broken china. And you want to use a non-stick craft mat. So you can see I have that down here. And very lightly off the mat, start going in a circular motion and putting it onto your cardstock. Now what's nice about Distress Inks and Distress Oxides is even if you go on a little heavy-handed, you can actually take some of it off. So, but I always try to start light and then layer it on. And what's nice about Distress Oxide inks is they have a lot of the qualities that Distress inks do. So the blending is really easy. By the way, I'm just using regular Neenah Solar White, regular cardstock here. All right, now I'm just going to add a little bit of Salty Ocean. The Salty Ocean I'm mostly going to do around the edges just to darken it up. A lot of people like to put a piece of paper down so their fingers don't get inky. I usually do that when I'm using the ultra smooth Bristol paper. All right, so we're going to put those aside for a second. The next thing that we're going to do is take a distress sprayer. You don't need to have a distress sprayer. You can use water on a paintbrush, but we're just going to spritz this and give it little spots of water. So this will give it the wet look. Again, a technique that people like with the Distress Inks is that you can lift some of that color up. So we're just going to give that a second to set in. And then take a paper towel and blot it off. And I don't know if you guys can see, there are little water spots now there where the ink was lifted up. Okay. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to stamp some. Actually, we're not going to be stamping. You can stamp, but I'm going to be using an old stencil today. So I wanted to recommend there are two stamp companies. This is the Hero Arts Koi Fish stamp set. It is a layering set, and it has the bottom layer, the top layer. It has some lily flowers and some sentiments. I also have the Local King Rubber Stamp Koi Pond, and this also has matching dies. So both of these, the difference is this is a red rubber stamp, and the Hero Arts is a clear stamp layering set, but you can get dies for both of them. So there are koi fish out there. I'm actually going to be using a very old stencil. This is a Dreamweaver stencil. And I'm going to place that down right about in the middle there. And I'm going to use some Post-it tape to hold it in place, but also I want to mask off the edges there, because I don't want that part of the stencil going through. So you could either use the stamps, you have the red rubber stamps or the layering stamps from Hero Arts. I have just chosen to use this old stencil because I feel like my stencils are not being used. They're in the stash. I also like doing embossing paste over these old stencils, but today we are going to be using sponge daubers. So the first color I'm going to start out with is Distress Oxide in Fossilized Amber. And just taking a little sponge dauber, and I'm just going to kind of put it down in random spots and twist. That's it. Nothing special. Next I have Wild Honey. Same thing, put it down in random places and twist. Spiced Marmalade. fired brick. And I didn't do this on the last card, but I want to do a little bit of black soot, just a tiny bit. Just a little bit. All right, now while the stencil is still down, I'm taking my black Memento marker and I'm just going to fill in their eyeballs. So you have an eyeball here. And let's see a little spot I missed right here. Oops. All right. So now the big reveal, we're just going to lift that Post-it tape up. And we have our two little koi fish. And because we just used Distress Oxide inks, I'm just going to wipe this off with a baby wipe. No big deal. Easy cleanup on that. All right, so then the next thing is the bubbles. This is a background stamp from Local King Rubber Stamps called Ripple. And I already have that mounted to a block, and I'm going to use the same Distress Oxide in Broken China. Just going to ink that up. Just stamp it down. So you don't need anything special here. You can use stencils, you can use stamps, but I just wanted to show how versatile these Distress Oxide inks were because you can use them for background stamping. You can lift some of that color off with a little bit of water, and you can sponge with them and also stamp with them. So there we have the little bubbles or the little ripples on there. And then what we want to do is add the lily pad. Now on the one I made originally, I had put the lily pads down first to make them look under the water and then the ripples over at the top. I didn't really like that after I did it. So on this one, I want to put the lily pads on top of the bubbles. So again, we're using Distress Oxide inks. The stamp that I'm using came out of the Hero Arts stamp. So it's the bottom and then the veins for the lily pad. There's also some cute little flowers in there. You could stamp some purple and white flowers if you wanted to. And I'm going to start with the Twisted Citron. And here's another tip. If you are short on your blocks, you can put one stamp on one side and then the other. And I put one on the right and one on the left so I could still see through the block. So I'm just going to use Twisted Citron. And because this is like a pigment ink, it will allow you to layer the ink, no problem. So if you don't like that those bubbles are showing through, you can just stamp over it and layer over it. And it'll cover up. You can even heat layer it if you wanted to. Alright, and like I said, my battery's going here, so I don't want to take too much time. And then for the veins, I'm using peeled paint. Alright, and I'm going to grab that black soot back again. okay to that. I'm actually kind of glad I made this mistake. So, what do you do when you make a mistake like this? Oh, it's just warning me my battery's running dead. Sorry, I thought it cut out on me. All right, so what you do when you make a mistake like this real quick is you stamp out your sentiment the way that you would like it. So I'm actually just going to put these on here real quick. Wishing you good fortune. If I wasn't in such a hurry, I would have taken my time and done it correctly. But sometimes you have to make a card in a hurry. You're like running out the door and you're like, I forgot a card. All right, so just as an example, you stamp out your sentiment again. This time you stamp it out on plain paper. And then what I will do is I will cut that out either with a punch or a die. And I will glue that right on there. And it'll be like a decorative die. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I want to show you guys how you fix a mistake. You know, we've spent all this time making this beautiful little masterpiece here. So there you go, guys, using an old stencil and sponging through and using distress inks for the background and making this cute little card. Thanks for watching and keep on stamping.